Hey you guys, welcome to a tutorial, a rib tutorial today from DaisyElleHookery. Now we're talking ribs today because you'll know that on my patterns moving forward, if there's a rib to be made, I'm going to be giving you the choice of which rib you want to make. So we're going to cover those three rib choices today. So first of all, here's one that's totally crochet, single crochet in the back loop only. It gives a nice ribbed effect. It does stretch. It can go baggy, and obviously if you're going to use this type of a rib, you need it in a washable yarn so that when you wash it, it can return, because it will go back, it will stretch out and go baggy. So it doesn't really give you that much of a return. But if you're a beginner crocheter or not as experienced, then this is probably the best rib for you to follow, because it works up quickly. It's simple and easy to do. It's a quick little piece of work. You work the rib in rows backwards and forwards, as it states in the back loop only, until you've gotten the length of the work that you want, and then your turn and work into the side. So we'll have a look at that in a second, and we'll do a couple of rows of single crochet in the back loop only just to show you. But that's how that rib looks. You can see these three here. These are the three different types of ribs. So there's your single crochet in the back loop only. So it does stretch out, but over time it will go baggy, so it will need a wash to pull it back into shape again. Then we have a knitted rib. So if any of you out there are bi-stitchal like I am, and you can knit, quite often knitters will start off using a garter stitch. Maybe you'll learn the knit stitch or the purl stitch, but once you've got those two stitches down, then a knitted rib is knit one, purl one. I haven't put instructions to that in my patterns. If you're going to use a knitted rib, I assume that you're a knitter and you will know how to do a knit one, purl one rib. So that stretches out quite well, and it does have a good return on it usually. Obviously, again, over time it will get a little bit baggy saggy and it'll need a wash just to pop it back into shape. But there's your knitted rib, and I'll talk to you in a second about how you work your crochet stitches into the top of a knitted rib. But quite often when I'm making hats or anything, if I see that it's got a crochet rib, I'll swap it out and I'll put my own knitted rib on, just so that I've got that stretch and return. Just makes it a little bit stretchier. And then the last rib that we're going to be looking at today, which is my favourite, it takes the longest to do out of all three ribs, but it gives you the best return. How's this for stretch? And I can really pull on that, and then when I let it go, it brings it right back in. It really does give you the best stretch return on the slip stitch rib. So we're gonna have a look at that as well after. So to start off with, we're going to look at the single crochet in the back loop only. So if I just put those out of the way, this is the Cozy Cool Beans pattern, and there'll be a separate video for the pattern top. But that's when you buy the pattern for that, that gives you the choice of three ribs. So this is just a small scrap just to show you, just a little bit of a swatch. It's chunky yarn. I've got a 7mm hook because that's what the yarn asks for. I chained, I don't even know how many I've chained. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I chained 7, and I put my first single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So I've got 6 single crochets along this mini row. So I'm at the end of my row there. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to put my hook in under the V from back to front. This is just a quirk of mine I've discovered. When I was a young kid, my nan taught me, when you get to the end of a row, especially if you're doing single crochet, you do your end chain, your turning chain, and you put your hook straight back into the work from back to front. Then when you turn your work ready to continue along the row, your hook is already in that first stitch, so that you never lose the end stitch. You see a lot of beginner crocheters, and they've got their work, and as they're doing it, so the work's getting smaller and smaller because they're missing the end stitches. This was something that I just learned. She taught me how to do this to stop me from losing the end stitches. So we're going under both of the V's on this rib, because I actually like to put, I suppose it's like a frame. Both my end stitches will be single crochet under both loops, a proper single crochet, not in the back loop only. So the first stitch of the row is single crochet, and then if you look along the top, and you can see the V, you work into the back V, the back part of the V, the back strand. So ignore the front strand that's here. You'll work single crochet in the back loop only works into this back loop. So if I show you here, here's the back loop, and we're not working in the front loop. The front loop gets pushed to the front and makes the little ridge, so it gives an effect of the rib. So insert your hook under the back loop, pull up a strand, yarn over, pull through 2, under the back loop only, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, under the back loop only, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2, again into the back loop only, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, the last stitch of the row under both of the V's, both of the strands there, pull through, yarn over and pull through. That's the end of your row. Chain 1, and we're ready to go again. And it really is that simple. That's your single crochet in the back loop only. It just gives for a neater edge effect when you're using this. If you single crochet rather than go through the back loop on your end stitches, if you single crochet both of your end stitches, it just gives it a nice little neat effect. I don't know if you can see that on here. Just gives it like a, otherwise sometimes it can be a little bit rough and ready, but if you can see there, it's quite neat along the edge. It's personal preference as well, so if you prefer not to do a single crochet at the end of the row, that's it. Hey, it's your rib, you do what you like. So we've put a single crochet into that first one. We're going into the back strand only, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, into the back strand only, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and that's your single crochet back loop only. That's as easy as it gets. So I'm going to set that aside, I'm going to have a word about the knitted rib. So this is just a small part of the knitted rib, and we're going to work crochet stitches into this. Now, just for ease, when whatever hook I'm supposed to be using, so say on my cool beans pattern I'm supposed to be using a 5mm hook. For this very first one I might drop to a 4.5, just because sometimes when you're working crochet stitches into a knit piece, the knit piece there can be quite tight. So I've used a 7mm hook for this because it's chunky yarn. It's just so that it's big enough for you to see the stitches. So just for this first row I'm going to use a 6mm hook just to pop in the crochet stitches just on the first row. Like I say, knitted stitches can be sometimes quite tight to get the hook into. So again, that's personal preference, it's just something I do. So I cast off in rib along the top of my knit piece. I left the final 2 loops onto a stitch marker because usually here you don't have to, obviously, but if you're going to change colour then this is where you will do it. And on a crochet piece we tend to do that, and we leave the last 2 loops of your stitch on the hook and then change colour there. It's no different when you're working into a knit piece. So I'm just going to cut this yarn here, so I'm going to change colour. I'm breaking all the rules because I've got worsted weight now working into a chunky with a 6mm hook and I should be using 5. But hey, this is just to show you, right? So I'm going to take my stitch markers out and get my hook in, and I'm going to change colour by pulling that through the final 2 loops, and I'm going to turn my work because we're working back along this row. Now if you have a look, see, all your knit stitches on this row are proud, they're standing up, they're coming forward at you. All your purl stitches on this row are laying back, they're making dips in there. So on our first stitch we're going to be chaining 2. Now I'm going to use linked double crochets here because on my cozy cool beans pattern I use linked double crochets. Whatever stitch you're using, obviously use that stitch, but this is how you would put crochet stitches into a knit 1 purl 1 rib. So I'm making my first starting linked double crochet stitch on that end. Now I'm only going to be working my crochet stitches into the purl stitches, the ones that lay back. I'm not working anything into my knit stitches that sit up. So if you look at the work along the top, you can see your purl V's. The knit V's are slightly tighter, but the purl V's are larger than the knit ones, and so that's where we're going to be putting our crochet stitches. So into the first V, the purl stitch, right, because I'm doing a linked double crochet row. So that's my first stitch. Now I'm linking, I'm going under the 2 V's of the purl stitch there, pulling the yarn through, finishing off my linked double crochet stitch, under the 2 strands of the purl stitch, And if I need to do any increases, because obviously if you do a knit one, purl one, rib and you've got, say, 43 stitches on your needle to do your rib, but then you want 44 crochet stitches, then you need to work it out that you're putting in more crochet stitches. So normally on my patterns I'll show you how many and where you're increasing. So there's an increase there, 2 crochet stitches into the purl stitch. And again through there. So that's how we're working our crochet stitches into our knit one, purl one, rib. And you'll see here the finished item. It just gives like a little jaggy effect along the top there. It's quite nice and neat. I quite like that effect actually. But it looks nice, it works well. If you try and put them into the knit, you'll get one stitch that sits further up. It just looks, well, it looks like a bag of bones, to be honest. So once you've done and you've joined your round, it actually is quite a neat little effect. But that's where you would put your crochet stitches, into a knit one, purl one, rib, just under each purl stitch as you go along. Just the same as if it was a single crochet in the back loop, only rib just all the way along there. So that's that one. The final rib that we're going to have a look at today is the slip stitch rib. This can sometimes be a little bit awkward. It can take a little bit of practice. You need to put no tension on your yarn. So even with the yarn coming directly from the skein of wool or skein of yarn, you need no tension. You're going to need 2 stitch markers. I know some people do it as a strip the same way as you do with the single crochet back loop only rib. I prefer to do it directly onto my piece. So I'll make my piece first and then I'll put the rib on afterwards, directly onto it. I think it just makes it look neater, because the ends of it, once you sew them on, can look a bit fussy. It's a lot easier if you do it directly onto the piece. So I joined my yarn here. I chained 7. I single crocheted in the back bump all the way along, so I now have 6 stitches on my row. I'm back here at the end piece, so here's where I'll show you, if I have the right hook, how to do the slip stitch rib. So I made my first slip, and you're slip stitching into the back loop only. I made my first slip there, and I put my stitch marker into the front loop of that stitch, because when I turn my work it will be in the back loop. I don't need it through both, I just need it through the front loop. So with no tension on my yarn at all, I'll go as slow as I can. I'm going into the back loop, pulling the yarn through and through, into the back loop, pulling the yarn through and through. You don't want to be pulling this tight at all. You need your hook moving freely into the back loop, through and through, into the back loop, through and through, and then your final one into the back loop. Take your stitch marker out, through both, and now you can give that a small tug so that it's snug on your hook. Do a tight little chain and put your hook straight back into that front loop there, which when you turn becomes your back loop, and through and through, and then you get your stitch marker and pop it through the front loop, and then you're ready to go back again. So that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. Now we're back at our piece of work again. So we've come from this stitch here, and obviously we're growing around, so we make a slip stitch into the next stitch along the edge of your piece, slip stitch, and then turn your work. Ignore that first slip stitch there, that first V that you've got there. Treat that as your turning chain and go into your second stitch, back loop only, through and through, one slip stitch, and bring your marker in under the front of that loop, because when you turn, that is going to be the back of your work, so it'll be in the back loop. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So create a chain and put your hook straight back into the front loop. Turn your work, that's now the back loop, and through, markers back in. If you don't use stitch markers, trust me, each of those end stitches there will get lost. They just disappear. They're really hard to pull out and dig out, so make sure you've got your stitch markers. But that's how to do a slip stitch rib. Really quite easy, and like I say, it's got the best return out of all the ribs. It can take a little bit of practice, so before you do a really beautiful piece of work, and just in case you don't get this the first time, I'd suggest doing a small swatch, you know, maybe 10, 20, a square of 10 or so stitches, and maybe do just do like a chain of 11, 10 slip stitches back, and have a practice, because it can take a little bit of practice, especially, you know, you don't want to put any tension on it, so make sure that you've got all the yarn out of the ball so that you're not even getting the tension coming straight from the ball of yarn either. This is a little boot cuff that I did last night for my granddaughter, so that's dead cute. A little mummy and me type set. And a little pair of gloves. Little fingerless gloves for her too. But all with the best ribs just because they'll grip onto her little arms, onto her little body parts. But that's a slip stitch rib. I hope you understood that. So when you get back along the row to here, and you slip straight into that next stitch, and back along you go. You come back down, slip into the next stitch, and back along you go, until you've completed your whole round, and you're back again at the beginning. And then you can do like a little mattress stitch just to stitch the seam up. So there's your 3 ribs, my loves. If you've got any questions about any of them, don't hesitate to ask. I'll leave all my contact details in the comments, and you can email me or get me on Facebook, message me here, come and knock on my door as well if you bring coffee and chocolates. Feel free. But I hope that's helped, and I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.